Tom, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm really sorry about the issues with StreamYard.
That's all right.
Now, before we start this very important subject, which is navigating the first weeks with Rescue Boxer, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Tom Candy, and I run Simplifying Shelter Behaviour. So I work mainly with dogs in rescue or shelter settings, working with dogs that have maybe some behavioural challenges or struggles that we need to improve so that they can go and live successfully in homes. And then as part of that as well, I support people who have adopted new rescue dogs, making sure they settle in well and have a good life.
Amazing. So obviously you're doing something fantastic, which I'm very grateful for, and I'm sure all the doggies you are helping to are grateful too. When I spoken to you, was it last month at the conference? You said that you don't see many boxers in rescue where you work. And it's quite interesting because now I have a foster here, and she is nearly 13. She's a boxer, nearly 13, and I've been struggling to rehome her for a few months now, probably due to her age, but also the fact that she needs to be a single pet. So a few days ago, I've contacted all the breed-specific rescues I know. So I think I've contacted like 15 boxer rescues, not only from UK but from Spain, Portugal, etc. And they all fall. So I'm guessing people are now putting boxers to more breed-specific places than general rescues where you work. Do you actually see many breed-specific rescues, or is this becoming more popular now?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really varied. I think, we've always had sort of breed-specific rescues, and they can be really great because obviously they have that understanding of the breed. They also tend to have a bit of a following of people who love the breed, obviously like your group with the boxers. So they've kind of always been there. And I think possibly with some people like understanding individual breeds a bit better, like some of the health conditions and some of the behavior quirks that we see across different breeds. Sometimes people do go to the breed specific rescues because they tend to understand a bit better, whereas obviously with the general rescues there can be concerns about some of those things. But I think it's also, they tend to be smaller, so they tend to be volunteer run, or a small group of people who really love the breed who sort of push forward in rehoming dogs that need it, which is obviously great because they have that community like we've just talked about. Yeah. But yeah, I have in general rescue, I haven't seen a boxer for a long time. So to give people a bit more information, I look after 4 rescue centres, or 5 technically, which range from 40 kennels up to about 90 kennels, about 120 dogs. Yeah. So it's quite a big population of dogs. Yeah. And yeah, we don't get a lot of boxers, which is probably but I think the breed has dipped a little bit in popularity, hasn't it? I remember probably about 10 years ago, there was a lot of boxers all the time. You saw them on walks and stuff.
Yeah, you see the waves, like you said, about 10 years ago, they were popular. Then it dropped. I think, I'm not sure if you remember the John Lewis advert, Christmas advert, with the boxer jumping on the trampoline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then boxers were popular again. Now I think boxers are more popular in some parts of England than others. Like in Dorset, for example, they're super popular. It's where I used to live, and now my previous business, the one I've sold, they still get loads of boxers puppies, etc. So I think it's down to areas as well.
Yeah.
But
And I think
it's
it's
so
like,
interesting.
if there is that network of breed rescues, I think that's really great, because what we're actually seeing as well is for quite a lot of the breeds where, again, we never really saw them in rescue, they are now starting to come in. So I remember at one point, probably 2 years ago, we had 5 St. Bernards across my network. Whereas, I probably hadn't seen a St. Bernard in rescue for 10 years, because, again, they tend to go to breed specific ones. So I think the fact that we're not seeing a lot of boxers coming into general rescue is a really, really good thing for the breed.
Good sign, yeah. Yeah. Sure, for sure.
And obviously,
Okay.
sorry, it's just got me thinking now. Because obviously the other thing is, if when you're looking for specific breeds, obviously when we're looking at breeders, hopefully breeders are people who really love the breed, they're pushing forward with things, and they're there to support people. So it might also be that, they're rehomed through the breeder, and therefore don't have a need to go into rescue at all, which again is a really
that's
good
how
thing.
it's supposed to be. Is it a law in England right now that puppies need to be returned to breeders, or
No, it's something that's been talked about, and it's sort of considered best practice. But the change to the sort of breeding law, really, the big one was Lucy's Law, which came out a couple of years ago. And the big thing with that is obviously that you can't sell a puppy until after 8 weeks, and the puppy should be seen with its mother, which is a big step forward in against things like puppy farms, which are obviously quite a big concern with some of the other breeds.
Sure. Okay, brilliant. So, but once boxers go into a rescue, there are different types of rescues, aren't they? Like, there are places with kennels, there are places, as we mentioned, like small charities, which are mainly based on having like a group of fosters. So dogs do not go to kennels, but they go to someone's house. Some kennels are outdoors, some kennels are indoors. So there are different environments where dogs end up when they go to a rescue temporary place. Do you think the difference between environments will have an impact for the dog in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of factors to consider there. So yeah, like you said, there's sort of 3 main routes for rehoming that we have, particularly in the UK. So the first is like a brick and mortar rescue, like you said, predominantly kennels, where somebody drops the dog off. They spend, a couple of weeks in kennels whilst they look for a new home, and then they obviously get a new home. Some are foster based, like you talked about, where somebody's temporarily looking after that dog. And then the other thing that we're starting to see crop up more now, which Blue Cross in the UK was sort of the main person that started doing this, and now everybody else has caught up, is what we call like home direct. So where you take a dog, so maybe they know they have to move house in a few months, or something's changing in a few weeks, and you've got a bit of time, and then a rescue will rehome that dog from the original home. Okay. So depending on why that dog is being handed over, from a welfare point of view, arguably that's like the best option, because the dog stays where they know, where they feel comfortable, and then can just move straight into a new home. Foster's sort of similar, where you get that improvement, but obviously it's still quite a big change. And then, however, there's a massive range in kennels in terms of, quality, resources, what's available. Some of the sites that I work with have, fully underfloor heating, and we've got stereos in every kennel, and all of these things to try and improve the welfare of the dogs. But ultimately, it's a really difficult place to be. They're surrounded by other dogs, they're surrounded by cleaning products. They're getting a lot less interaction than they probably got in the home. So, with the best will in the world, most rescue dogs are probably coming out an hour a day, if that, which means they're then spending, 23 hours a day alone in their kennel. So it can have a big impact on, firstly, the dog that we see when they're in our care. So we might see a very different dog. They might be a lot more worried, even though they're quite a confident dog. They're just overwhelmed by that change. Sometimes we can see dogs that, are really struggling, and that might affect, what type of home you put that dog in. So, for example, often you can have a dog who's really, really dog friendly, but they come into rescue, they're a bit worried, they're a bit overwhelmed by the environment. So then they get rehomed as a only dog, but actually they really love the company of other dogs. So that's one element of it is, it's hard to get a true picture of the dog.
Yeah.
And therefore it's hard to think about what that future looks like for that dog. And then the other thing is, unfortunately, like I said, with the best will in the world, some dogs really struggle with the experience, and it can be a traumatic experience, and it can change them. Touch wood, that isn't the case. Most of the dogs who struggle in the environment do really well when they move homes. It's just about how we support the adopters and the people who are taking the dogs home.
So how can you actually give a future dog owners a description of the dog when a dog is in kennels, and we cannot 100% be sure that, for example, a dog is nervous, because it could be just because of the experience of being in the unusual environment. I see it so often, and that's something I experienced myself because I rescued one of my boxers from a rescue place. And what I've been told by the rescue was completely not true. When I got the dog and I've seen the dog and I lived with the dog, and the first few days and probably weeks, it just felt like what I've been taught and what I've got were completely two different dogs. So how do you guys help people to understand that what they see now, or what you know about the dog now, is not necessarily what they're gonna get? If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a big concern, and it is a big challenge that we face. And sometimes, we have people ring back and say, oh, you said he's worried about other dogs and he loves other dogs, or
that's a good thing, isn't
that's
it?
a good thing.
What if it's the other way around?
Yeah, and often it is the other way around. And the theme of assessments is massive in shelter and rescue. It's one of the biggest talks about topics. If you look on Google, it's like there's 38,000 results if you search for dog assessment in rescue. Oh, wow. And the answer is we don't have a great way of doing it. The way that most rescues are moving, and the way that I personally think we should be moving, is what we call more observational based assessments. So rather than taking the dog out of a kennel and walking them up to another dog and they're not going very well, and then you saying, oh, this dog doesn't like other dogs, we take things a lot slower and we just do things day to day, and then we collect information about that dog. So that starts with the handover. If we've got a previous owner, having a really good conversation with them and making them understand that, we're asking these questions not because of there's any judgment, not because, we're concerned about what they're going to say, but we're trying to build this picture of the dog that we've got in our care. We can then take that information and look at it with what we're seeing. So if you've got things like a real life room, so a room in the rescue that's got a sofa and a TV and a washing machine, all of the stuff that we expect to see in the house, we can take the dog in there, spend some time with them, and look if those two pieces of information line up. And then similarly, lots of rescues have great volunteers that take the dogs off site for walks, or, we can do short-term foster placements if long-term foster placements isn't an option. And we collect all of this data and we look at it and build the best possible picture for the dog. So, if the previous owners say he's amazing with other dogs, and then he comes into rescue and is a bit worried about other dogs, I'm not sure, then that says to us, okay, maybe we need to take him out of the environment, take him off site, give him a chance to have a little walk, and then just see what he's like passing dogs at a distance.
Yeah.
And you build that picture, and then, we, to the best of our ability, that's the information that we then pass to the next home. And, we don't always get it right, because it's not, like you said, it's not always a true reflection of the dog in our care. But that's kind of the best tool we've got at the minute. It's just building that picture.
Brilliant. And so you've got a picture of the dog, right? You've got some information that you've been given from previous owners. I guess sometimes they are true, sometimes they're not. So you've got all this, and you found a dog, a perfect home. What happens next? How rescues, the ones that you work with, how they support the new owners of that dog?
Yeah, so more often than not, you'll fill out a form or whatever to say what type of dog you're looking for, and then you'll be matched with a dog. Or some rescues, you'll see a dog on the website that you fall in love with, and you can ring them up and get matched that way. Generally speaking, what happens is you then go in and meet the dog, and there's generally a member of staff there to kind of help you out, but then you'll have the opportunity to take the dog on a walk, or do different things with the dog to see if they kind of match up. And then when you get home, this is where it kind of varies rescue to rescue. So a lot of rescues will do like a pre-adoption talk. So they'll speak to people about, what it's like to after a dog, what it's like to bring a new rescue in. Often we forget. So if you previously had a puppy and it's now been 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years since you had a puppy, we forget what toilet training's like. We forget what the mouthing's like. So we just have, a chat about the type of struggles that we see. And a lot of that can center around something that's called the rule of three. So it's an idea that kind of came out a few years ago based on...
I wanted to ask a question about this. Okay, I'm glad you've mentioned this.
I know where it's going. So it's based around the first 3 days, the first 3 weeks, and then the first 3 months. Yeah. It's good in that before we didn't really have anything. So a lot of, there wasn't a lot of structure to supporting dogs when they first go home. For me, it's more of a guideline because every dog is different. So it's really hard to say, do this for the first 3 days, then do this for the first 3 weeks, and then by 3 months, this is the point you should be at. Because depending on the dog's experience, depending on the type of home they've got to, all of that will vary. And some dogs might need a year to settle in fully into the home. It really depends. But it's a good starting place. So the idea generally is the first 3 days, you keep things nice and quiet. It's about you getting to know the new dog and the new dog getting to know you. It's building those...
The compression, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about settling into that new environment and building those relationships. So it's, we don't want to have lots of visitors. We don't want to be walking in busy places. I know everybody wants to come and see the new dog, but, you want to just say, no, we just need a couple of days to settle in. It's like when you have a baby, all of your family are trying to come over to meet the new baby and you just need a bit of time. Once you've gone through those first 3 days, the dog's starting to settle a bit. They kind of get in the routine and they're a bit more used to the environment. And that's where we can just start exploring the world a bit more. So we can start to go to slightly busier places and get the dog more used to things. Any sort of close family or people the dog's going to have a lot of interactions with, we can start to introduce that. And we're always going to assess how that's going based on body language, based on the dog's response to things. And that's going to help us determine, what steps we take next. And then the idea generally is for a lot of dogs, once they hit those first sort of 3 months point, they're nice and settled in the home, the routine's sorted, they're used to it, they're comfortable. And that's really then where we can start opening up the world to the sort of things that we probably got a dog to do. So for me, that's like going to the pub and having a Sunday dinner after a nice walk. For other people, that might be dog sports or canicross or whatever you want to do. But like I said, it's for me, it's not a set rule, because if you get, for example, a dog who is a street dog from abroad and they've never seen a TV or a washing machine, it's probably going to take them a lot longer than 3 days to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But it's like I said earlier, it's kind of a good starting point to think about supporting new dogs.
What usually goes wrong when people rescue dogs and you get a phone call, or perhaps they come back? What is the main thing that you hear often that didn't go right and people want to return the dog, or people really struggling?
It really varies. It really varies dog to dog. Sometimes it's just things like the dog hasn't been very clean in the house. They're not house trained, but that they might not have been there for very long. Sometimes it could be that they're a bit too excitable, so they might be mouthy and jumpy uppy and grabby. Probably one of the concerns for some of the boxers that I've worked with previously. Sometimes they're just not the right fit. They might be a bit worried about other dogs and they've gone to a really dog populated area and they're seeing a lot of dogs. Nearly always it's to do with people doing things too quickly. So, they've taken the dog home, and this is, I can literally think of a conversation that I've had where on the way home from the rescue, they went into Pets at Home to get the dog some toys, which they thought was a really great idea. But obviously, there's all the rabbits and all of those things. Then they put the dog back in the car, they got home, and then in the afternoon, they had like 3 people over for dinner. And then the next day, the grandchildren came over, and it's just really overwhelming for the dog. So nearly always it's to
It
do.
always comes from wanting to do good, right? Because people feel sorry for the dog, what the dog went through in kennels or what previously, and they just want to do something nice and good for a dog, but it just doesn't work the same way as it works in human worlds, doesn't it? But I guess also you wouldn't do it with if you adopt a child and you take it from one home to another, you wouldn't take it to a, I don't know, children play park to play with other kids and then shopping for toys and clothes and sweets and then to a family dinner. Again, you would take it slow, but I guess people just do it because they like kind of want to make it better for the dog.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that like survivor situation, that savior complex of like, oh, I've done this really great thing and I want to make the dog's world as good as they can be. And sometimes it's just people are excited, like, we're all excited to get a new dog. We all love our dogs. They're a big part of our life, but it's just that it's often that misunderstanding that the dogs have gone through so much. They've left their previous owners, they've been in a stressful place, and they just need the time to take a breath and get used to things before we start doing more with them. And that's kind of the biggest challenge is getting people to understand that, yes, in 6 months' time, you'll have an amazing companion and you'll be able to do all of these great things, but you just need to take it slow. And I think the thing is, like, when you've got a puppy, if you go out and get a puppy, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things. There's not much science behind it, but things like the 5 minutes per month walking, or the dogs can't go out until they have their vaccinations and stuff. But then when you go and pick up an adult rescue dog, people are used to going out for a walk and used to taking the dog places, so they don't put 2 and 2 together to understand that the dog's been through a lot and they just need a bit of time.
Yeah, so the main thing that I just say to the club members here is that slow is fast, and it definitely applies to taking a rescue dog, right? Now, what I see often, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but when people get a new boxer, and it doesn't matter if it's a puppy or they take a rescue dog, they say after a first night or after 2 nights that the dog adjusted really well and is sleeping well and everything is perfect. The dog is calm, is happy, is playing. There is no problems whatsoever. How do you feel when you see or hear those things after just 24 or 48 hours? Because for me, later on, it just shows that a dog is almost like on a survival mode rather than being themselves. It takes a while for them to blossom into who they really are, and to show their true personalities and their true nature. But for me, the first few nights are never indicator of a dog is definitely comfortable and confident. For me, it's usually a dog is just trying to cope with what's going on around, even though it looks like they are super calm and happy. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do get like those amazing dogs that just walk into the home and they're super chill and settled. You know, they do exist, but I would say they were the minority. And we do often see that sort of honeymoon period. So everything's kind of rosy. And then, like you said, we start to see a bit more of the dog's personality come out. They feel a bit more confident in their environment, a bit more comfortable. And then, you know, they might start trying different things to see what works. Because that's always the case with dogs, right? You know, dogs just do what works for them in the moment and what they get reinforcement for. So you might start to see things like scavenging because the dog's being super quiet. So somebody's left sorry, I'm just laughing with my dogs. And my example was my dad left some beef burgers out on the side and the dog ate all 5 of them because my dad's used to very small dogs who can't get on the counter and Jess isn't. So, you know, people become a bit complacent with the dog being there and therefore start to make silly mistakes. As well as, like you said, that kind of growing in confidence as the dog settles in. And, you know, them starting to try things out a bit to work out what buttons they can get away with pressing.
Yeah, exactly. When do you think rescue boxers should be taken to a training? Right away, after a few months? What's the best approach?
That's a really great question. I think prevention is always better than cure. And it is.
And why people don't understand it? I don't know. No matter how many times I say it, people just don't listen. They come back 6 months later, and then they're happy to leave the money when it comes to training. But why people don't listen when it comes to prevention?
I think it's just all expectation, isn't it? And it's what we're told in the media, you know, that our dogs love us and they want to do everything for us. So why would we need a trainer?
Disney picture,
just do it. But I think there is, it's strange, isn't it? Because, you know, we all ship our kids off to school. But yeah, when we think about our dogs, we don't necessarily think about it. So it depends. I think, you know, rescues that either have post-adoption support or where they have, you know, relationships with local trainers, people tend to get in contact at like the 2 weeks to like a month point where those problems start to arise, like we've just talked about. But there's so much benefit to working with a trainer early doors. A lot of it is just relation. And even if it was like going to a scent work class or something that's really fun, where you're working on that relationship, you're building that team dynamic, you know, that can then help work through a lot of concerns. And one particular reason that's a challenge with rescue dogs, that it's important that they kind of do get that support early doors, is there isn't a relationship there in the same way. You know, if somebody comes to you and they've had their boxer for 5 years and now they've started to bark on the lead at other dogs, well, they've had 5 years with that dog. But if they've just picked a boxer up the week before and nobody told them that they didn't like other dogs and now they've started barking, the relationship isn't the same. So people, you know, it's different. They can take the dog back or they don't have the same relationship with that dog. So we need to kind of get in there early to support people so that they don't end up at breaking point. Because generally speaking, if you haven't had a dog for as long, you know, you get there a lot quicker because you don't have good things to reflect back on, I suppose. So, you know, we can all think of amazing times that we've had with our dog and they act as a bit of a buffer for all of the times that they've been a bit of a knob or, you know, done something that we didn't really like. But if you don't have any of that, then you're only seeing the bad.
Yeah. I know you said you had not seen a boxer for a while in rescues, but I'm sure you've seen boxers during your career. Why boxers ended up being rehomed?
I think they're just quite misunderstood as a breed by other dogs. You know, I think there's a lot of elements of them struggling socially sometimes. which I think can play a part, particularly if, you've got people who go to work and their dog needs to go to daycare or something. If the boxer struggles in that environment, that can be a challenge. I often think as well, people forget that they are, they were bred for a job. They're quite an energetic breed. They've got a lot going on, and people kind of see the cute face.
Thank you so much for saying this. I wish more people, like you said, they're so misunderstood. More people should know this. They are working dogs.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of things that you see. The ones that I have worked with in rescue, it's normally jumping up, bouncing off people, and they are the epitome of a small dog in a big dog's body, aren't they? And they don't know their size. They're knocking people over left, right, and centre. And it's more often than not from malice, but that combination of bouncy, bubbly boxer in quite a hefty body doesn't fit them well to a lot of situations.
Yeah. What I see mostly is that boxers are being rehomed or end up in rescues is during adolescence, because it's all of a sudden that cute puppy is now a strong dog, and people cannot hold them at the end of the lead. They struggle to control them, as you said. The arousal outbursts combined with hormonal changes that just become too much for people.
And
it's the mismatch between a people and a dog. Like, some people are just too calm for boxer, if you know what I mean. Like, but boxer people need to kind of be like a boxer sometimes. That's why I say to my people, like, you need to give, if you want to understand the energy, you have to give the energy, and you have to know how to use the energy appropriately, because you cannot kill it. You can suppress it, which is not going to do the dog any favors, but it's so many, that energy that boxers have can be used in so many ways, in positive ways, and we can use it for training, but people really struggle with it when they don't get the same energy levels, when they cannot match with their dogs. So
I think that's such a great point, and I do think that's often something that's missed as well. Like, we spend a lot of time talking about dogs being calm and resting and teaching a settle and teaching all of this sort of stuff, but actually, the thing that really benefits these types of dogs and boxers and other bully breeds and tons of other breeds is meeting them where they're at. And giving them those outlets so they feel fulfilled and those needs are met, so that when we then take them home after we've been out and done some tug play or done some scent work or whatever, then they feel ready to have a snooze on the sofa and relax. Whereas often I think we, like you said, we try and manage the arousal rather than harnessing it. And that can then make it really tricky, because we get this mismatch where the dogs then find their own ways of getting rid of that arousal. And often that's things that we don't want to see. Like,
we don't want them to do,
zoomies in the living room with your TV on the wall, those sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm so glad that you're kind of on the same page than I am with this. And it's just, I feel like this is a message that, especially when it comes to rescue dogs, it needs to be more available, and it needs to be like literally all over the place. So people hear it and see it over and over again until they really understand it. Because taking a rescue dog is a beautiful thing. And I'm so grateful for those people who rescue dogs, but it needs to be done properly, right? Otherwise, it's not. I think if it's done badly, then it's not doing the dog any favors. So, I think what you guys do in rescues, you're doing fabulous work. And especially, I really like the fact that you're taking the data and you take it slowly, because then It really means that every dog is treated individually, and they're not just a dog, right? Because every dog is different, as you said at the beginning. Even though you cannot get that full picture at rescues, there is still something that you can learn about them and help people to have fabulous life with them once they take them home. Is there like a one very important specific tip that you always give people, or something that you would like to share with people here now?
Yeah, so we talked earlier about pre-adoption talks and having conversations. And when I used to I don't do them as much now, but when I used to do them, my big thing was always dogs have a right to be a dog. So we forget, and there's this whole fur baby craze at the minute, and my dog does have a hoodie, so I'm not going to say anything about dressing up dogs, but we forget sometimes that they want to go and jump in muddy puddles and roll in things that smell really bad and do all of these things that for us is a pain, but that is what it is to be a dog, and they should be allowed to do that. Although recently we did go on a camping holiday and our dog did roll in some fox poo and we were staying in the camper van, and that was a different story because that involved a wash in the river or a host of other things. But we forget that, dogs need to do dog things and we should be fulfilling their needs to do that. And the other thing is enjoy it. We all get a dog because we want to have great experiences and build a great relationship. And as long as we take things slow, most dogs get there at some point. And like we said earlier, if there is any concerns or struggles or even just you want to go out and do something fun, getting started when your dog is ready, but early doors is always going to be a pro in my book.
Cool. How are we doing with time? I've got like 2 or 3 questions here that people would like to ask.
Of course, no worries.
Perfect. Okay, so Shirley, if you already have a dog, can I ask, if you rehome another, ideally should they meet several times with your dog before foster adoption?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends. You're going to be the expert on your own dog. So it's really important that you go to the rescue with as much information as you can about your dog. What type of dogs do they like? How do they play? Because hopefully the rescue is the expert on their dog and they know. And if they've mixed them with a couple of different dogs, they're going to know what type of dogs they get on with and what type of dogs they don't. A lot of it is driven by both dogs. So you might do one walk, it might go really well. They're off lead playing, they're off doing their own thing as well, because that's also important. Nobody wants 2 boxers running around the living room constantly playing. They need to also be able to have their own space. So sometimes it could be 1 or 2 meets. Sometimes, if we're not too sure, we'll get people to go off site and have a longer walk or go to different places, or even sometimes go to the home and see how they get on for a couple of hours and then come back, have a break, and then, adopt the dog the next week or whatever. But really, it's about you being A, the expert in your dog, and B, also a bit of a cheerleader. So because sometimes the rescues want the dogs to go home really quickly as well, because obviously we've got other dogs waiting to come in, but we've got to make sure it's right for everybody.
If it's local, then it's fabulous if people can do it. Just take a dog for a few hours, etc. But obviously that's not possible when people are taking dogs from abroad, and this is where things can go wrong. So I definitely did one thing right when I adopted my boxer, and 100 things wrong. And yeah, well, you learn on your mistakes, but it wasn't fair on my dog, and it wasn't fair on the rescue dog. So the only right thing I did when I introduced them to each other was doing it outside, off lead. Well, that rescue dog was on a long line because obviously I didn't know her. So and she came from Spain, so after traveling for 2-3 days, I didn't think that the dog might be tired. Like I don't know, it just didn't. At this point, I didn't have this knowledge to actually think about it, I guess. But yes, I did take the dog. So they met outside, and they had not loads of space. There was no distractions, etc. Everything was good until one of the dogs grabbed the stick, and then another dog wanted the same stick. So this is where the first trouble started, and then at home. Again, I didn't think about putting toys away, so that started causing lots of troubles. And actually, there were fights between the new dog and my dog at that time at the very beginning, which obviously was not great start for the rescue dog. It was not a good experience for my dog. And after a few days of taking the rescue dog, I thought that I've made the biggest mistake of my life. But because she came from Spain, I couldn't just send her back. If she was from a rescue around a corner, I probably would, because it was that difficult. I'm glad I didn't, because that dog is like the most amazing dog in the world now, and everything is fine, and there is no problems with them. She put me on a path to become behaviourist. So without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. But all those mistakes happen when we don't have a knowledge, right? So it's just especially when we are taking a rescue dog to a dog where there are dogs already. That is more challenging to just introducing a dog to pet-free household.
Yeah, and like you said, a good example of that is dogs from abroad, but also during COVID, we weren't able to have people come to our sites, so we did a lot of meets, on the street and in gardens and things like that, because we obviously still wanted to rehome to people who had other dogs. So it is doable. It's like you said, that it's having that understanding of where there could be potential catch points or conflict, and setting up some management to make sure the dogs have got space that they can be apart if they need to be, if you've got 2 rooms or whatever, or a baby gate, or and resources are a way to start with, and then you can introduce things as when the dogs are a bit more settled, but also when people are around to watch and watch what's happening. But it really depends, and even before, not so much now, but before, where we used to have a lot of dogs sharing kennels, quite often those dogs would only meet once or twice, and then they'd be in quite a small space together. So it's not always the end of the world, but you can definitely take steps to make it more likely that it's going to be successful.
Yeah, and easier for dogs, isn't it?
True.
Right. Question from Chris. We rescued a boxer dog a few years ago, not from a rescue, but a veterinary nurse who took this dog in. He was 9 months old, and already he had 3 homes and names. We were not home checked, and there were no questions asked about our situation. We took this poor boy home, but it was very difficult time. Although we were experienced boxer owners, it was very difficult. He fought constantly with our older girl boxer, and we spent most of the time trying to keep them separated, especially around meal times. It turned out he was experiencing severe heartburn after feeding, and would attach her after he had eaten. He was frightened of everything and didn't know how to play. We had him for 4 years, and very slowly he came out of his shell and settled, but it was a traumatic time for all of us. We sadly lost him to blood. Our other rescue boxer was 7 and very calm and fitted in so well, but he died of cancer. My current boy, Rupert, we had from a pup and is 2 and only dog and quite nervous. It's the first time we have had a single boxer, but we're wondering if he would be better with another boxer. He loves my daughter's boxer coming over for a play date. My question is, we come to a question now. Would he be better with a calm older dog or a young dog so they can adjust together, or a bad idea altogether? We don't want a repeat of the last rescue situation. Any thoughts, please? So the current dog is 2 and he is quite nervous, but he is fine with daughter boxers. It would be good to know, I guess, how old are the daughter boxers? Because I
Yeah,
guess
it's a
that
really
will
good
kind of
question.
indicate on. I always feel like dogs, they either do better with dogs with similar energy or slightly lower energy, rather than dogs who are more boisterous when they join in a family. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like you want, like I said, actually, what you're looking for a lot of the time is neutrality. So actually, what you want, what makes a really good mix, is they like each other and they meet and they can have a play, but actually they're happy going off and doing their own things because they're like us. You know, if you go on a first date, you know, you're not sort of hugging and touching on stuff in the restaurant straight away. You know, it takes a bit of time to kind of build up to it, and it's the same for dogs. Like, so what you want is sort of calm sniff, and then be able to go off and do your own thing, and then gradually over time build that relationship. Um, it's tricky with nervous dogs. Sometimes it can really help to have a more confident dog, and we'll do that in the rescue as well. We'll match up shy dogs with more confident ones to help bring them out. So it's definitely not a bad thing to be considering. Sometimes you can then end up with two nervous dogs. So it is about making sure that you pick a dog that is going to fit well into the situation. And it might be worth having a chat with, keeping an eye out for a dog and trying the mix if the rescue's open to that. The most successful rescues are ones that are flexible and are willing to try things and take things slow to get the right home for the dog. And it sounds, from the other dogs they've described, it sounds like Chris is a really great home. So you could do it if you have the ability to do it, and not everybody can do it. We used to foster, and my dad absolutely hated it. But one option, and it's a bit of a contentious way of putting it, but foster can be a little bit like a try before you buy.
Yeah.
So you can take a dog from a situation that they might be struggling in. You can give them a really good holiday or opportunity, and you can see how it goes. It might be really difficult to then let that dog go if they find another home, if it doesn't work out, or if they're not the right dog for you. But you've made quite a big difference to that dog's life.
Yeah.
So if that is an option, it is worth considering that as well. But yeah, I would. Nothing in that information jumps out and says no. I definitely wouldn't think about getting another dog, but you just want to make sure it's the right dog and that you do it in the right way.
Yeah, yeah, and for the right reasons. I think in that situation, I would advise to work on a dog's confidence, the current dog confidence first. So, because when we add the second dog to the household, then that means we have to split time between two dogs, right? We have to spend individual time with two dogs, and then if you have to train both dogs for different struggles, then that means you are spending more time on it. Or you have to take time away from one dog to give it to the other dog, which is something that I think in multi-dog household people don't really think about when they get another dog. I really don't like a saying the more the merrier, especially now because I've got 6 dogs and one of them is really ill, and it it's stressful and it takes so much time. And I know what it's like when you have younger dogs, especially with my Mali. He needs a lot of attention, he needs lots of training, etc. So I have to take this time away from my older dogs. And I don't think it's fair. I try to be as fair as possible, but I think we just need to remember that we're not gonna get like magic 12 hours in a day. So again, while taking a rescue is a beautiful thing to do, I think I will just try to work on the current dog confidence more. So then I have kind of less problems with both dogs. So yeah, that will be my answer to this. Okay, Tom, I think we covered everything, especially the 333 rule, which I really wanted to talk about. And I think we've given people really good points on how to choose a rescue and how to give that rescue dog the best start in a new house and with a new family. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and answering the questions, given really fabulous advice. I'm really glad that you are the person who joined me for this live. I really wanted to do and talk to someone from rescue for a long time. So thank you so much for agreeing to do it with me. Yeah, so this is thank you from me. Let me just double check if there is any more comments that I need to. Oh yeah, people say it's a good idea. I didn't think of that. Yes, we made that mistake adding Tara to Tula, not easy. Mia is wonderful. Thank you. Very interesting live. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. I'm sure there will be more. Eddie said, keep up the great work, Tom. Respect. So yeah, loads of thank yous coming. And massive thank you from me, and thank you for your time. And I apologize for the little delay at the beginning.
It's all right. Thank you for having me.
No, amazing. So yeah, enjoy your evening, Tom, and your weekend. I'm sure I will see you online and at some conferences in the future. So yeah, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.